Tenant Improvement Allowance, landlord contribution, and rent abatement. Tenant Improvement Allowance, sometimes called landlord contribution, and rent abatement are two of the most common landlord concessions that are negotiated. Tenant Improvement Allowance, also called TI or TIA, is a payment from the landlord to the tenant to be allocated towards their build-out. Like rent, TI will be expressed in a dollar amount per square foot. Often, the landlord will restrict the types of improvements that can be funded by TI. Ideally, they'll want their contribution to go towards improvements that will convey with the space after you leave. So, base building work, storefront improvements, possibly kitchen infrastructure, that kind of thing. They generally won't want you to be spending the allowance on FF&E or fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, because the theory is that you can take that stuff with you when you leave. That said, everything is negotiable. It just depends how much leverage you have in the transaction. If a landlord really wants you for a space, they'll be more permissive with what they let you spend your TI on. Your construction team will be able to help you figure out whether you'll be able to spend the whole allowance on the elements the landlord designates. This concept of which improvements may and may not be funded by TI is one that isn't always included in the LOI. It may be saved for the lease, which is just fine. The other component of your TI allowance that you may see in the LOI is the timing of payment, though this could also be saved for the lease. This can vary a lot, but know that it's very unusual to get your TI payment up front. Almost always, you're covering the cost of your build out, submitting receipts to the landlord, and then they're reimbursing you. Usually there will be a few tranches of payments, maybe 50% of funds upon 50% completion of construction, 40% upon 100% completion of construction, with 10% held back until you open, pay rent, and receive all lien waivers from your contractors. It's standard for the landlord to hold some portion of the TI payment back until you've satisfied a handful of conditions. Claiming the rest of your TI payment is an effective incentive to get you to clear those last hurdles to getting open and ultimately paying rent, which are the landlord's top priorities, so it makes sense. So one of the most common conditions for that holdback, and again, 10% is common, though actual amounts can vary, but one of the most common conditions is opening to the public for business. I also mentioned receiving all lien waivers from your contractors and subcontractors. You get lien waivers once you've paid for all the work. What a lien waiver actually is a document that waives the contractor's right to put a lien on the property, which is their recourse if you don't pay them. As you can guess, a landlord really doesn't want liens on their property, so getting lien waivers from you is really important to them. They may also hold back TI until you paid your first month's rent. This is a little silly because it's a cash for cash exchange at that point, and if you paid an advance deposit, it's a little much to require the first month's rent. There may be other conditions the landlord imposes on you as well. Obviously, the goal is to eliminate as many of those conditions as you can. Let's turn to rent abatement, the second most common concession a landlord may give. With rent abatement, the landlord is giving you some portion of your rent for free. There are lots of different ways this can be structured. There may just be no rent due for a certain period of time at the beginning of your lease, or you may have a certain portion of your rent abated for a certain period of time, say 50% rent for the first 6 months. Landlords sometimes favor rent abatement over just lowering the rent because it allows them to keep the face rate high, which helps them support a higher valuation of the overall asset. And while TI payment can certainly be helpful in offsetting some of your startup costs, rent abatement is great because it alleviates some of the burden of rent while you're ramping up sales. If you're negotiating a deal with rent abatement, make sure to pay attention to whether triple nets are abated as well. Lots of times, only base rent will be abated, so make sure you're considering triple nets when you're thinking about your budgeting.